Hey everyone, welcome to another AI conversation. I'm here with Gerard Ompad, who's actually we are just LinkedIn buddies, but we seem to agree on many things, especially about the abuse of data science. But anyway, we'll get to that later. So, sige, Gerard, maybe a brief introduction for our viewers, like what's your background, what do you do, and then let's
Oh,
kick it off there. No?
hello everyone, I'm Gerard again. Yung background ko, I'm a graduate of chemical engineering. I'm also a graduate of tropical medicine and I'm currently finishing my statistics. I work as a data scientist in a US company. So yeah, I may work as a data scientist pero marami akong issues sa term na data science, doc. So yeah, I think it's a good topic to talk about in this episode.
Yeah, maybe we start with that. No, in a nutshell, what's your beef with data science? And then let's see what happened, how we can pang dissect it. Because I have my own kind of love-hate relationship with the term also.
Yeah, true. It's just actually for me, data scientists are just statisticians and mathematicians. Um, what do you do? Kung ikaw isang kumpanya and you lose your luster, di ba? You give it a new name, you give it a new brand. So I think that is what happened to the field of data science. Eh, if you look at it kasi, okay, let's go back to the sciences. Physics, the study of physical phenomenon. Biology, the study of life. Psychology, the study of human mind. So ano yung data science?
Do you agree with the statement? Kasi marami ring tatamaan na a true science doesn't need to put the word science in it.
Yeah, true. Chemistry, for example, doesn't have the word science in it, right?
Yeah. Although we
It,
do have computer science, which is
yeah, true.
obviously they had their own contention decades ago. Pero parang gano'n. Pero sige, going back. So your beef with it, your beef with the science. How do you
Ito
wanna
kasi,
describe it?
those field of sciences that I just mentioned, first they generate data, they utilize data as well. They study their data. So ano yung ano ngayon? If you say data science, study of data. So you mean the object of research mo is yung data, right? Which is you cannot do that without a context. You cannot do that if you're not wearing a physics hat, or you cannot do that if you're not wearing a biology hat. So yung question ko now is that ano yung distinguishing factor ng data science from the other scientific field? Diba? Ano yung mako-contribute nila? Because basically, science is seeking new knowledge and improving old and existing knowledge, which is obviously nandun din sa data science, pero it's common to all scientific field, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Then, aside from that, science is a body of knowledge. So ano yung, again, what is the distinguishing field of data science, right?
Yeah. So
And
if we follow it strictly by kind of the definition, data science should be the study of data.
yeah, true. Pero paano mo gagawin yan without a context,
Yeah,
right?
correct.
Kung if you're not if you give someone a set of data and you give it to a physicist and then you give it to a chemist and then you give it to a biologist, do you think they will draw out the same conclusion?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Yung mga ganong question. And then next is, when you say science, we go through a process in what we call the scientific method, which although ginagamit siya sa data science, but in a very skewed way. Kasi kung sasabihin mong scientific method, di ba, you are required to generate a testable hypothesis.
Yeah.
So, ano yung hypothesis na a data scientist tries to answer? A
Yeah.
business problem? A business problem is not a hypothesis. It is a problem that you actually want to solve to what? Generate more profit or improve existing products.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's sige, maybe to dive into it further. If you were to describe what data science as it's practiced now is, what would you call it? Para it doesn't attract.
Actually,
Maybe a lot of it is the labeling, or maybe
yeah,
you're
probably the labeling. Pero um, if you ask me what is data science, to be honest, I don't know because it's an amalgamation of everything. Para siyang si Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Diba? So, but it is a tool. It provides novel methods, novel tools, but it can't be considered a science. Same way as statistics is not a science. Kasi statistics is not studying natural phenomenon. It only provides us tools
Yeah.
to
Would it be fair to call data science just a rebranding of statistics?
definitely in
Is
my
that one approach? Kasi I hear some statisticians say it's like that, no? Parang ganun.
yeah, na because people usually has this misconception na iba ang data science sa statistics because of the traditional way statistics is taught in the universities.
Mhm.
Probability theory, statistical inference, p-values. But statistics is more than that. That's why we have Teixeirani who is even trying to define or compare statistical inference versus statistical learning, which
Yeah.
is yung mga ginagawa ng mga data scientists. So yun yung mga parang an anchor to distinguish statistical inference and statistical learning, yung book ni Tim Shirani.
But what about, for example, would there be parts of data science that fall outside statistics? Maybe it's to kind of
Yeah,
narrow it down
yeah.
to
So
that point.
marami because again it's an amalgamation of everything.
Mhm.
So you can even see some knowledge in physics that is used in data science. So even some knowledge in biology that is used in data science. Say for example, yung dendrogram has been used in biology for the longest time before um, pinasikat yan ng ng mga data scientists.
Yeah. Pero dendrogram as a visualization, does that fall under statistics also?
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
So yun. The 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 concept of data science is not a separate scientific discipline. It's merely a rebranding of existing tools.
Right. What about okay, sige, let's now veer into kind of the contentious territories, no? Which we love
Oh,
to talk about. What about the like deep learning, you know? Because of course with a few exceptions, everyone doing deep learning now are not statisticians, you know.
true.
In fact, many of them are not even computer scientists. It's kind of a mix, you know.
Hmm.
Yun na nga, parang I'm wondering if was it because of the commercialization of the label data science
I
that,
think so,
that
yeah,
got in the way, no?
true. The danger of that is because it's easy to conduct deep learning experiments right now kasi people can just import libraries without even knowing the mechanism behind the libraries they're using, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're not your background is not from a quantitative field, as long as you have studied how to program, I mean, we have YouTube, we have Coursera, as long as you have taken those short courses and know how to import, that's the danger there kasi you are already branded as a data scientist.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that's delikado yan yung that kind of phenomenon.
What about
At
obviously
gateway.
there was the term that existed before data science was also say analytics, no? And that seems to be a broader or business intelligence, which seems to be a broader category because it does not necessarily imply parang statistical models.
True.
But people have been doing kunyari financial analysis, risk analysis. Obviously bringing stat to these disciplines can be helpful. Pero it doesn't necessarily require a statistician to do these fields. Would that be closer to what people call data science with plus statistics? Parang ganun?
Um, to be honest, still not because if you look at it, business intelligence in itself is also an amalgamation of everything.
Yeah.
We're using different methods from different discipline.
Yep.
Iba pa rin siya, right? So when you say a data science as a scientific discipline, they need to have that distinguishing factor na ito truly data science talaga tong knowledge na to.
Yeah. Which at this point we're kind of still parang searching
Yeah,
if we
which is
can if we can appropriate it, no. Okay. How about uh the the IT side of things? Because obviously data science also involves, for example, databases or
true.
nowadays data lakes.
Mm.
You know, how much of that is data science and how much of that is just IT, no? Without meaning to be reductionist, no? Minsan kasi IT
Not
is just
really.
something, no?
I cannot speak for that kasi um data management tools is a very important part of a company. Now we are trying to distinguish IT as a profession and a data scientist as a profession. So anong difference ng if I'm an IT graduate and I work as a database administrator,
Yep.
so anong differentiating factor ng data scientist meddling with data lakes to DB administrator, right?
Or should data scientists even be doing that? Maybe that's a good question.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good one. I think yeah, yan kasi yung naging problem eh. That data scientists are unicorns. They can do end to end, which is not, which is very dangerous. For me, no. Because okay, let's strip out again the word data science. Sige, if you are hired as a computational statistician, right? And then here you are trying to do database management. That is not your field of expertise.
Yeah.
You're not taught to do that. Same with with a data scientist, depending on the background ng quote unquote data scientist. Kung siya galing sa IT, then he would be more comfortable handling SQL scripting than doing data modeling, right?
Hmm.
So the problem now is here na depende sa background ng data scientist, doon din nakadepend yung comfort zone niya. A data scientist having a background in IT is more comfortable doing data engineering works than someone who has a background in math or physics or statistics. So he's more comfortable in doing modeling.
Right. Okay. So I'm kind of worried where that brings us when now that we're entering AI, no? So AI is kind of like the sum totality of all of these disciplines. I know I meet people who are actually not comfortable with the word AI even. I think you might have been one of them also. Oh no, someone else. Parang they challenging the term artificial intelligence as a term. So yan na naman, labeling na naman. And then
Oh,
at the same time, and this is something I disagree with actually. There's an implied progression. Because I
mhm.
hear a lot of people say, "Oh, we're not ready for AI yet because we haven't even mastered database management or data warehousing." So I know where that's coming from kasi that's once upon a time that was the vendor line eh. Na, okay, before you do predictive analytics, you have to learn descriptive analytics, parang ganun.
Yeah.
And nowadays, actually, I used to believe that a lot personally, no? And mamaya, let me know what you think. But at the end of the day, I feel that it's really more of a sales pitch to force clients to buy all of these tools. Okay, let's buy a visualization tool first, and then later I'll buy a database, and then later I'll buy some statistical modeling. Because all of these major vendors, IBM, Oracle, they have stacks of tools, no? So there's an implied parang progression na, okay, first you buy your database, store everything there, you warehouse it. Next, you buy your Tableau, Power BI, you visualize it. So descriptives na. Including the dendrogram thing that you mentioned. Of course, spreadsheet. Then later after that, okay, we have enough data. You can now start doing your predictive analytics, your regression. And then at the end of the line, you do artificial intelligence. You do
Yeah.
chatbots, blah, blah, blah. But actually, in practice, you can actually skip to any point you want. No? There's nothing stopping you from just doing a chatbot. You don't even need to
Yeah.
do a data warehouse to make a chatbot.
Yeah.
So deep inside, I spent 3 years doing IT consulting. I felt there was it felt like a scam. So totoo lang. Parang why am I preaching this? I know there is a reason for it. I did the briefing, but nowadays And then when the data science trend came up, that also coincided with the rise in popularity of R, Python, the notebooks. And I think that was a big break. I don't know if you noticed this. People before that era were very proficient in SQL, and they would
Mm,
insist
mm,
on load it in Postgres, MySQL, Oracle, whatever, no, SQL Server, and then you do the queries, and then the
mm,
output of the query is the one you do analytics on. When the data science troops came in, they completely skipped the database step, and then you started loading CSVs in their Python notebooks or in RStudio, and then they were doing predictions. No? That didn't imply that their data was much better either. In fact,
true,
it
true,
actually worsened the data quality problems. You'd be loading
true.
CSVs blindly, but they got to prototyping faster. That was the difference because the database folks, tagal, no? It takes a year to get anything done, and the business people are quite impatient. And then now with the AI trend, I think a similar thing is happening because everyone before November 2022, when you said AI, oh, I'm gonna load TensorFlow, Keras, whatever, PyTorch, do convolutional neural networks, and then classify dogs and cats, something like that. After November 2022, people are talking about ChatGPT, Midjourney. It's essentially closer to mainstream products already. People who can actually use it. You don't even need to write code. You can actually use it to write code. So now we have this parang three generations that are broken from each other. You have the original generation, who are like database hands. No? I actually relate to that generation most because I did a lot of that work in my banking days. No? Then the data science, basically people with MacBooks in Starbucks. That's how I call them. Doing their Python stuff, their R stuff. And then now the AI folks who
Yeah.
are completely different breed. And I'm also trying to relate to them with my renewed parang push to AI. So do you agree with this or disagree with this, or how do you feel about this phenomena?
I think um it's just the perspective na they are siloed to each other, because if you look at it, it's actually a spectrum, right? If you're someone in who knows this technology, who knows this science, I mean, quote unquote, let's just tag it as a science or a field,
Yeah.
you can actually run from someone who do AI back to someone who is doing databases. So I think it's another form of um, identity politics that is put in place.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's a good point.
Huh? Parang, oh, ako, ano, database engineer ako. Oh, siya naman, AI engineer. Pero, come to think of it, an AI engineer can do what a database engineer can do, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Because then, I think it all comes down to the branding. Mas malaki siguro ang sahod na binibigay ng isang AI engineer compared sa database engineer. I
And the
mean,
same thing happened to data scientists compared to
true,
data
true, right?
analysts, which is kind
True.
of a weird thing. Mm.
Yeah. And but if you look at the job description and the requirements, parang this is what a data analyst do or a statistician do.
We actually did a labor market report. I don't know if you saw that in 2021. And part of that study was we scraped all of these job descriptions and did a little bit of NLP just to see if what would cluster with each other. So what that was actually a big revelation to AAP because we did it for AAP at that time. Because AAP had this notion of five, parang sa RPG, five character classes. No? You have the data analyst. Sorry, you have the data steward. Okay,
Mhm.
then you have the who, for lack of a better term, they're the ones who actually have the data already and
Oh.
govern it. No, and according to the AAP definition, which is kind of wide. It's everyone from a librarian to a data privacy officer. That's data steward. Then you have the data engineer, which seems very distinct. Um, you know, uh, it was based on basically the ETL people, the database people. That it kind of coalesced there. Then the third was the data scientist, which focused solely on models. So which I found odd when we came up with it, because that's just a task. Pero, and there are people I've actually met who obsess just about modeling, no? Nothing else. As opposed to the data analyst, which is the fourth character class, who look at basically using data for business or maybe in the scientific field, the application of the data, not necessarily the models alone. And then the last character class was the analytical manager, no? Basically an expert leader who leads this team of crack troops. So when we first came up with that, actually we borrowed that from another framework. That was Sherwin Pelayo's contribution. It felt
Yes.
intuitively right. But then when we finally did the labor market report, because we coined those definitions in 2018, we did labor market report 2021, so 3 years later. So sige, let's see, let's test. Parang hypothesis testing. Let's test the existence of these character classes. And the way we did it was we scraped LinkedIn, I think Monster, basta mga job descriptions. But we had a list of keywords which we would associate with certain character classes, no. So anytime the word statistics came in, we would actually put it under data science as opposed to data analysis. So yun, nakalatag. What we found was very interesting. With a few exceptions, I think data steward was the oddball. Almost no jobs matched data steward. So it doesn't
Interesting.
exist. No? Okay.
Yeah.
Then data engineer, data analyst, and data scientist were highly conflated. So parang it was one job pala talaga. But there were parang we call this outliers or maybe variants, parang virus, no. So generally they clustered together, but then you had the analyst scientist and the analyst engineer. Siguro ganon. So that a data engineer actually does a lot of analysis as well.
True,
And then
true.
the scientist also does analysis, but has the stat connected to it. And then there you have the generic analyst. So that was weird. And then we found a few managers, so that existed. Then we found a new job that didn't exist in the framework of AEP, which was analytics instructor. So these are people who teach. That
Yeah.
made them distinct, which also includes academics, teachers, people who do workshops, because, well, I guess that's also a job, right? So that was a revelation, but AEP hasn't revised their character classes yet, no. And then I think it's up for review already because that was 3 years ago, two
True,
years
true.
ago. Ngayon naman, there's the machine learning engineer and the AI engineer that popped up,
Here comes trouble.
who are not necessarily data engineers. And then
True.
now, if everyone had the problem with the word scientist, ngayon people are having problems with the word engineer. Kasi
Engineer. Yeah.
engineers are licensed occupations, diba?
True, true. Yeah.
And none of these engineers are actually licensed. Or should they be licensed, no? Siguro yung tanong. So ayun, what do you think of that, no? It just
Okay.
adds more monkey wrenches into the mix.
So I'm gonna wear my chemical engineering hat. So the purpose of an engineer in general is to build things, right? We borrow theories, we borrow knowledge from the sciences, physics, chemistry, biology. Then we build stuff. So in general, we are not also a science. We're not considered
You're an
scientists.
applied science
Oh,
or something, yeah.
yeah. So and not all engineering field requires a license. Industrial engineers doesn't have a license, computer
Mm.
engineers as well, for some reason. But then again, when you say machine learning engineer and all those new fields of engineering, quote unquote, what's the difference? What's the difference between their practice and their knowledge compared to the already existing fields of engineering?
Yeah.
Right? Machine learning engineer, what? You try to build pipelines. That's what the IT people and computer science people do,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So again, yeah, it's really, really dangerous right now that businesses try to impose these kinds of terms. And because by imposing these terms, we are now trying to generate a new identity,
Yeah.
which confuses everything or everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then with that confusion comes, 'di ba? Bad bloods.
Hmm.
Anong difference ng ML engineer sa industrial engineer? Pareho naman tayong my knowledge in doing ML modeling. You train for that. I also train for that.
Yeah.
And with regards to the license, actually, when you say like a license for the ML engineer or the AI engineer, I think it's not necessary. Certification, yes, but licenses, no, because um their knowledge is not concrete. Like unlike sa chemical engineering or mechanical or civil, na the the knowledge is already cast in stone. Thermodynamics, structural engineering, but in fields like computer engineering and industrial engineer, the knowledge changes by time. Same with the ML engineer.
Hmm.
And not to mention again, the knowledge that they have are just borrowed from the other fields. They're not unique.
Yeah. And I think also to segue slightly, when when data science became popular, I think this was also the time when a lot of academics joined corporates, no?
Yeah,
For
true.
example, physics is quite popular. Actually, chemical engineering, because I know there's I don't know if you know if that Colin Christie of AEP is also a chemical engineer, no? Actually has a lot of units in statistics, no? And analysis compared to some other engineering. Um, so chemical engineers actually tend to be quite analytical from my experience. So I'm not actually surprised that you actually ended were actually a chemical engineer. So yeah, and so from other fields, industrial engineers obviously, I think they're actually closest to what a business plus stat plus computer
Yeah,
science professional should look like. No? So I
yeah.
would, but ironically, I addressed the Institute of Industrial Engineers just this year. No, I'm not an industrial engineer, but they actually kind of adopted me. They gave me an award, and it's because the adoption of IE within the data science field was actually quite lower than I thought. I thought most IEs would go into
Me
data
too. Yeah.
science. But apparently, the bigger chunk of their graduates go to manufacturing. Uh, so they're closer to maybe Six Sigma, which is in a way another type of data science in itself also.
Yeah.
Um, so I found that very odd. Na they were actually, I would say, they were actually unsure if data science was a place for them. And I
Mm,
said maybe one thing you just need to beef up on knowing yung curricula. I had to look at some curricula. You already have all of the foundations, but maybe you lack a bit of grounding in the actual tools, which
mm, true.
unfortunately is a battleground, no, in data science. Are you a Python person or an R person? Are you a
Yeah.
Tableau person, a SAS person? So parang people tend to be confined to their tools of choice, no, or their employer's tools of choice, which I also found a little weird compared to I think in academia, open source is their favorite tool set
Mm,
because of the cost, no. So dumami yung mga academics who are all mostly Python people or R people with a few exceptions. So that made it really rich and conflicting. So in a department you could have someone who came up from the ranks with financial analysis, and then an economist would come in and bring their econometric analysis, and then a physicist would come in and bring their their physics models. They have a model for everything, diba? From diffusion models, thermodynamics. They start applying all these physics phenomena. Sometimes it works, but I think that's also in a way a little naive to
yeah.
assume that, kasi essentially what you're modeling with business is mostly social phenomena, people, right?
True.
People
True.
buying goods, mga ganyan. And okay, that actually brought an interesting point. I think there's an underrepresentation in data science of people from the social sciences.
I agree. I totally agree with that. That is why I have a friend, he's a graduate of psych in Ateneo, and then um he took statistics in UP Diliman.
Mm.
And I was really quite he was a very interesting person because every time because I came from a quant background, so I don't see the social phenomenon in my result. I
Yeah.
just, okay, ito yung nangyari. But here comes this guy who has a background in psychology and would say this kind of interpretation. Na, kaya, this is happening because probably the age group thinks like this and thinks like that.
So they bring more qualitative insights
Yeah.
into the mix. Yeah.
So it's really true na they're very there's an underrepresentation of the social science in this field because of the fear that data science is a quantitative field.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's the hindrance there. But then again, I would like to say na it's an interdisciplinary community. I don't consider that as a separate scientific discipline, but it's a community of people who uses data and try to gain insight from that data.
Yeah. I think also because I experienced this when we did work in COVID, but more communications related work like vaccine acceptance because they didn't like the word vaccine hesitancy. Just positive, no? DOH. So we had to look up communication theories.
Mm,
So stuff like, social behavior change, diffusion of innovation. So these were kind of in the social sciences. And we did find them useful, not necessarily as a quantitative framework, but as a way of explaining phenomena. So
true.
meron ng past explanation of why certain segments would behave this way. And it was helpful in merging it with whatever empirical data we were getting. So I found that quite revealing na, yeah, if we had more interaction between the STEM and the humanities,
Yeah, true.
diba, it would be interesting. And then where does that put the economists? Because they're technically social scientists, but they try to sound very STEM, very STEM oriented. With all due respect. Um, sige. Okay, so certainly definitions are messed up. What about AI? What's your view on artificial intelligence now, and is it following the same bad habits as
Oh,
as
I
data
hope na.
science?
I hope na. So I'm gonna tell you a story. I started teaching here in Cebu, University of San Carlos. My subject was intelligent systems, and then
Intelligent systems. Okay.
yeah, so here comes a student who asked me, "What's the difference between an intelligent system and an artificial intelligence?"
Mm,
So that stirred me up. It gave it it gave me a very big question mark in my head that up until now I'm trying to answer. So again, maybe intelligent systems and artificial intelligence are just a correlated field, except that AI now has a new set of tools that can maybe handle a wide variety of data compared to the traditional IS. Um, for me, AI is actually also a
yeah.
tool for social good. And then just to just to in my opinion, AI is actually indifferent. It doesn't care about your race, your religion, your color, or your gender.
Mm,
What the problem now is the people who develop the AI. So it's really unfair if you look at these social media sites putting blame on AI because in fact AI is just a product of the human mind, right?
yeah.
AI does not need to change. What needs changing is society and the biases that we always put into our fellow people, to our fellow human beings.
Yeah.
I think yeah, that's a problem there. AI is already a well accepted field. We have ChatGPT, we have GANs, but then we complain about racial discrimination, underrepresentation. That's not the problem of AI. It's a problem of the people who develop that.
Yeah.
So ethics should start with the people and not during the development of the AI.
But I think one problem we also have is uh the people developing the AI may not have ethics at the top of their mind.
I remember my professor in tropical medicine, Dr. Jimiliano Eligay. When I took my thesis, I was under his care. he told me, if your research is ethically sound, then it is technically sound. So that's why you need to pass the scrutiny of the ethics board first before you can pass the scrutiny of the technical board.
Yep. Yep.
So that's a core memory when I took tropical medicine. And I think it's also helpful when doing AI research or applying AI to any forms of products. So first it must be technically sound. I mean, first it must be ethically sound, then it's technically sound.
Yeah. Actually, a lot of the ethics references I've also encountered come from bioethics. So,
True.
you know, the health, biology, and medical fields have been at that uh juncture much longer than the computer guys, no? In my view. So, for example, experiment design there's an ethics input into that. Are you exploitative with your experiment? No,
True.
especially when it involves health, you know, and the health people love their double blind,
RCT.
RCTs
Yeah.
or their cohort analyses, which I think is a really strong, I would say discipline, which is I would say missing from more commercial, their counterparts in the commercial world, like marketing.
Mm.
In fact, I even encounter marketers who find it strange that for example, you've done marketing work yourself, diba? Parang if you're gonna do like a promo, you need a control group who you won't give a promo to. Or you'll give a variation of promos. So that means you won't really give the offer to 100% of your prospects.
Yeah.
And I remember I've encountered marketers who could not get it because in their minds, why would we not sell to everyone? I
Interesting.
said, no, that's not the issue. The issue is if you sell to everyone, how do you know you're selling? Or
True.
people would buy it anyway. You really need,
Yeah.
So I mean, these are early days pa, decades ago. Nowadays, I think more or less everyone knows, and it's embedded in the tools. For example, you do Facebook ads, Google ads. The experimental design is already embedded in the tool, which is funny because most people using the tool are not even aware of the experimental design. They just assume, things will happen. So that's the point eh. Parang in the current regime, there's that lack of discipline, which may also be related to the fact that people come from different backgrounds and they're not all operating with the same di lang skill eh, parang maturity, no?
Mm.
And maybe that talks to your point earlier about labels, because if you're called a scientist, you should in theory be doing science in whatever you're doing, no? So are you a marketing scientist, for example, and doing these experimental designs? And if not, then, and I've seen this because my background is really finance, accounting and finance. For a very quantitative field, accounting and finance actually under practices statistics. The kind of quantitative discipline is slightly different. I think where it meets together is people who are doing risk management. So
Mm.
they come from a finance background, but they bring stat into it. So I came from that mold. So it's intuitive for me. But for let's say your typical accountancy financial controller, they do numbers, they do trending, they do visualization, but they rarely apply, let's say, little things like standard deviation, variances. Everyone is happy if you beat expectations on the upside, but not on the downside.
Yeah, yeah,
The
true.
statistician would see both, parang upper and lower bound, diba? Yeah, it's actually breaching the bounds that's more interesting rather than the up or the down. So mga ganun, it's not intuitive. Sige. Anyway, I think we're
Actually, it's not our fault. It's not your fault or the marketer's fault because I think it all starts with the school. When I when I had this interview with some people, some students from other fields, not just in comsci, their form of statistics is actually combinatorics and number
Mm,
three, like in how many ways, right?
mm,
So from there, they have this confusion of statistics is in how many ways. Okay. Or like in how many ways can I pull a jack in a full deck of a card, which is really not statistics. So college pa lang or high school pa lang, we have this skewed notion of what statistics is. And if we are properly taught statistics, it's the inferential part of statistics, not everything that is really statistics, which includes statistical learning.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about the downsides of this. So obviously, it is what it is. Yung nga sabi nila.
Yes,
How,
sir, sir.
how do we, or what can go wrong? Do you have any stories of how some of these, if it doesn't have to involve work you've done, it can be other work, but do you have stories about how this can negatively affect people or companies, or start who are basing decisions on not necessarily sound analysis or sound inference? No, I think that's where we're headed with this, right?
Um, the bad part is that businesses are already accepting it is what it is. So long time ago, I worked with this company, and they're trying to develop a predictive model. And I told them na, no, we can't use that because it's just 60% or actually 55% accurate. For them, it's already good. It's better than 0% accurate or random guessing.
Okay.
So there pa lang, ano na, may problema na. But if you really want to flourish in a very competitive field called capitalism, you have to have a good set of people who understands these tools, which we call statistics, not just statistical inference. These tools on how to look at data and how to generate information from this data, and lastly, how to transform this information into action.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not just referring to data scientists. This could be anyone who has this kind of skill.
Or I guess it's incumbent on the practitioner, you're saying, no?
Yeah, true.
To make sure that they are updated or thereabouts, no? Yeah, I mean, I think I'd agree with that. Um, but then also, how do you identify if a person needs it? Ito siguro yung magandang tanong din eh.
Yeah, true, true. Even me, for now, I can't actually answer that um question, because if you look, it's actually business, it's actually culture wise. So different businesses have different culture.
Right.
One business would say, okay, 55% is enough for me, but then the other company would say, no, we want a better model. Or
Yeah.
if you want to do like statistical inference on your marketing scheme and you say a p-value of zero point 0.2 is enough for me, but it's not enough for the other companies. So mahirap siya eh. Because I think for them, as long as it generates profit, even if it's wrong, it generates profit.
Yeah, even if it's random,
Yeah,
businesses care about profit anyway.
I have to be frank. So
That's so true. That's so true. Even if it doesn't make statistical sense. And then conversely, you can have the most statistically significant model, but if even with a statistically significant model, it doesn't necessarily mean it's profitable.
true. So
Yon.
ito pa ang worse. You are hired as this person who analyzes the data, and then okay, you have a good sound method, but then the result goes against what they are expecting. So it's already wrong in their
Yeah.
eyes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Correct. Wow, that's hard.
Yeah.
That's really hard to think to figure out. No? Hmm.
Because these people, the people from the upper management, the people that doing the decisions, they always have these certain beliefs, and they will try to impose that to your methods. They don't care if your method is very smart, very innovative or novel, as long as, I mean, I'm not talking to all companies, but some, they just want to confirm their beliefs,
Hmm. Hmm.
which makes the work even more difficult.
Yeah. But I think that's actually more of a, I would say, a management flaw. For example, you will encounter companies, especially the ones who never really use data, are highly dependent on expert opinion. When we say expert, it's internal experts, people who have more experience, who have been, you know, working in the company longer, not necessarily people who know how to think properly. No,
True.
just because they've been around long enough, you kind of develop that. It's a bias, like I would say I have a similar bias. Hey, I've been working in data for more than 20 years. You kind of lean on that. I think maybe for me it's different because it's actually experience using data. So go for others similar of a similar experience, but not using data and still achieving some profit.
Mm.
That can give you ideas of ano nga parang superiority na I don't need data. I've been doing this.
For
I
quite
don't know how many times I've been told that, no, in my career.
uh,
It's the iho argument. Iho, you were still playing with your Holland and I was already running, this
exactly.
company. And I said, okay, great. But in my mind, once upon a time, you were also young. How did you start? Don't tell me you didn't make mistakes. And then we now are on the verge of automating these jobs.
Mm.
That's going to be a big resistance for people who, would say, hey, look, I'm very experienced. I've done this well, profitably.
Mm.
Some of them aren't even arrogant about it, but the refusal to accept that, hey, look, an algorithm can do what I do.
Mm.
Diba? Parang, that's going to be hard. Anyway, sige. Can we still have some time. Can we talk about what you do? So what kind of work keeps you busy, and maybe try to relate that to the upcoming, I guess, disruption of AI. Do you see it disrupting what you're doing right now?
Um, Not in my work per se, but for me though, the biggest disruption right now with the current technology is in education, in health, and in law. So I
Mm,
think those are the three fields that will be greatly affected. First, in education, so we have the existence of ChatGPT, Google Bard, all these forms of chatbots, and it actually tries to disrupt the traditional way of teaching.
mm, mm,
Um, Traditional teachers would say we will have an exam, academic integrity, which is, I'm not saying it's bad, it's very useful. Um, what else? Assignments. But if you look at the academic integrity clause, it's really old school, right?
yeah,
Cannot you cannot use Google Bard, you cannot use all these kinds of new technologies to create your assignments. If you do, it's considered cheating. But then the question now would be, how would you evolve given that this technology already exists,
yeah.
right? So in me, personally, now that I'm teaching um, young people, I told them that if you want to be competitive, being resourceful is the key. If I give you an assignment or an exam or a project, you can use Stack Overflow, you can use even ChatGPT to do that. All you need to do is be creative in your prompt,
Mm,
because
mm,
that is where the new factor will be. We don't care if you're smart or intelligent. What we care about is that you're creative,
yeah,
creative in developing your problems, creating in solving the problems.
yeah.
So yeah, I think right now we need to revise how we teach young people, and we need to revise education in general.
How do you
And same,
feel about introducing AI early in the curriculum? Because that's also contentious in some cases because people either disagree or agree that uh students should be using or exposed to all of these parang technologies early because it might affect the learning process. No? How do you feel about that?
um the question with the question there is, aren't they using AI outside school? So when,
Yeah, yeah.
right? When? So it's better to like introduce it at an early age. I have a nephew. He's still in I think he's grade 6. And then He asked his teacher, if I use ChatGPT to answer the assignment, is it considered cheating?
Yeah.
So that's one smart question. Um, for me, it's good to integrate AI early on. At least, 'di ba? Hindi sila in Cebuano words, we have what we this term called ihas, or meaning I don't know what's the Tagalog term for that, but it's like being dumbstruck.
Yeah.
Parang ganun. Um, if you introduce these tools at an early age, they will be more competitive in the future. Because right now, actually, it's no longer how smart or intelligent you are, right? It's how creative you are in solving problems or developing new products.
Yeah.
Nandun na tayo eh.
Yeah. Okay. Sabi sa'yo, may mabibitin tayo eh. We're at the hour na, no? So,
It's okay.
we have to leave some for the next episode. Maybe some words of advice for those entering the field, for example, of AI, from your perspective. What are some pointers you want to leave them? Because they're obviously going to be exposed to a different set of tools early on compared to the rest of us. What is a good, uh, kind of perspective to leave them with?
I would say first, be curious. You need to leave your comfort zone. And then next is, this is very important, be creative. Be creative in developing your solutions. I think that's the two words that I would like to share to people who wants to go into this field.
And then what about the ethics part that you mentioned? How do we navigate that?
Yeah, it's actually part of the creativity. So again, your solution would not be very technically sound if it's not ethically sound. And you have to also be creative into integrating ethics into your technology.
Yeah.
So first, it should not be exploitative. I mean, the basic tenets of bioethics, everything is there.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess I hope to catch you in another conversation,
Sure.
Gerard. In the meantime, uh, thank you for sharing your insights and, of course, kind of indulging this little discussion on terminologies now, because I think it's something people sometimes forget. And then I think it impacts them unexpectedly. For example, when applying for a job or when discussing roles in a team, that's when these mga bugbears come up like, hey, you're the data scientist, not me. Mga ganyan.
True, true, true.
And it becomes unproductive at that point. So it's good to keep people aware that these issues and phenomena actually exist. So thank you for that.
Thank you as well, Doc, for having me here. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. I'll catch you in another chat.
Thank